Fantastic. Do we do the intro now, or do we do it after? Nick, when did these things start, bud?
I think we've started, and I think we can do the intro. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's SCI Friday with ML. And that's not a mistake. ML's name is so long, she's abbreviated it to 2 letters, but she is amazing, and she'll tell us all about herself when we get into the show.
Nick, we paid money for a jingle. Someone's supposed to say there's 3 words.
That'll be me. Nick, please roll the jingle.
I'm not going to lie, it's a great jingle.
Well, we need to do like a Peter McKinnon, what's up, and welcome to the channel, right? We need one of those things. We're still working on that. This is episode 3 of SCI Fridays. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to bring you all things SCI, security, compliance, and identity. And in this week's show, we have someone that goes by a 2-letter acronym, MR. Welcome to the show. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do? If you have a star sign that you subscribe to, we'd like to know a little bit about that as well.
I do not subscribe to star signs at all. I did not come up with a 2-letter name. I'm not Prince. Next thing, I'm just going to change it to a symbol kind of person. But it was just over the last 9 years or so, the people that I worked with kind of shortened my very long name into a more manageable acronym, I guess, especially for my email address. Trying to fit Mari-louise Labuschagne at dimensiondata.com became a problem, so it became email.
Dimension Data is not the sponsor of this show, just that we put it out there.
I'm sorry, that was just my previous email address. My current email address is a lot shorter. It's ml@port443.co.za. That helps.
Actually, it's much, much cooler than that. And you haven't told us your actual email address because you get to be...
Wizard at, yeah. This time around, I got to pick my own title, and it's definitely going to be Wizard. But yes, I'm the co-founder of Port443, which is a cybersecurity SOAR as a service provider. With my partner, Tony Walt, and that is basically what we do. We kind of took the cloud approach, much like AWS and Azure, to SOARs.
So,
and there's that word, right?
Yes, we both caught on to the word. And cloud security.
Orchestration, automation, and remediation, or cloud security? Both of them. There you go.
Well, it's both, right? And I'd like to ask, and maybe kick off the show with a question to ask about security. And my first question was going to be, do customers actually understand cloud security? And let me take a step back and ask, because customers don't just have cloud assets, do customers, and that's you watching the show, do you understand what security actually means, or is it just something that you pay for? And so that could be on-premises security, or it could be cloud security. ML, what are your thoughts on that?
So I guess there are similarities, if you can explain it correctly, between traditional on-premise security and cloud security. If you think of things that are similar, in a traditional kind of network or a client estate, you would have a firewall present in terms of security and looking at the traffic in your network. In cloud, you would have a web application firewall. Okay, so firewall versus WAF. For network traffic, you would have a router. On the cloud, you can have a network load balancer or application load balancer. You know, you've got some kind of means to control traffic within your cloud environment versus on-prem. If you look at compliance, for instance, on the kind of on-prem Traditional security route, you would have to be compliant to best practices of whatever the technologies or controls is that you put in place to protect your network. Much the same with cloud. There are also compliance and best practices that need to be adhered to. So compliance kind of span across the more traditional security approach where everything was on-prem as well as on cloud. I think a lot of people at the moment think that once they move into the cloud, then compliance and best practice goes out of the window. And that's entirely the wrong approach. People need to understand that even though you host your estate or your data or your applications or anything on cloud providers, you still need to adhere to best practice and you still need to be compliant to regulations.
I have a concern with one of the words that you used because it sounds very subjective to me. Best practice. Where do we get that from?
So usually the vendors, so say AWS or a certain firewall if you're using Cisco or a Palo Alto or any kind of firewall, the vendor itself, so whoever developed the technology, will publish a best practice in terms of configuration of that tech. The other very well-known best practices would be stuff like NIST, so National Institute of Security Technology,
we like NIST,
and CIS, Center of Internet Security. So there's a couple of very well-known best practices that you can adhere to. I personally like kind of combining those, so taking your vendor best practice, but also checking against NIST and also checking against CIS and PCI, so Payment Card Industry Standard. So if you can kind of get to a state where you can cover your bases with both your vendor best practice and then well-known standards out there, and preferably kind of compare your configurations against as many of them as you can, then it should keep you compliant.
I have a question, seeing as Nick's gone with the first two already. Are you finding customers that, because of COVID, have thrown their collaboration into the cloud, right? And that's all they have there. They literally said, spin up Teams, nobody gets a mailbox, we use Teams for collaboration, right? And everything else is still on-prem. They've literally just synced their identities so that the user can log into Teams, right? And this is how they've been functioning. And they're at a point now where they want to move other workloads to the cloud, and they're saying, well, how do we go about doing this? And when we speak to customers, two questions: how much is it going to cost me because we think the cloud is expensive, and I can no longer pull that network cable out of that machine should I feel that the machine's been compromised. So are you experiencing that from customers where they don't know what cloud is or what security is in the cloud?
I think that's a three-part question there. The first one, have I seen customers who chucked everybody on Teams? And that's the only thing they did in terms of kind of dealing with the pandemic? Yes, for sure. And I think that's a perfectly normal and good response. Nobody expected this pandemic to kind of go as far as it did, where everybody was kind of homebound for 18 months. So, I think companies did, to various levels of maturity, the best they could. And if that means kind of getting everybody set up on Teams so we can at least have a meeting, then that's perfectly fine. Second part of your question, yes, a lot of them then still have the rest of their estates on-prem. And I think that's perfectly fine as well, because you cannot just rip and replace. So try and move your on-prem onto the cloud without any planning. I mean, AWS calls it well-architected reviews. There's a lot of planning that goes into moving things. Well-architected reviews.
Framework. It's a WAF. So it's well-architected framework is a standard, and both AWS and Microsoft talk about the cloud adoption framework, which the well-architected framework is a pillar as part of your journey into cloud modernization.
Into the cloud. So I think, for companies, because the pandemic was unplanned, obviously, let's hope, they did what they could to make sure the businesses could still run. And yes, a lot of stuff is still on-prem, and they might be looking to move the rest of their assets onto the cloud. And I think, there should be a workshop involved. There should be proper planning around what should be moved, what shouldn't be moved. Is it possible to move everything? what's the kind of risks that would come with moving into the cloud. Just like on-prem security controls, everything has a risk. There's no avoiding the risk entirely. You're right when it comes to kind of cost implications for clients. The first thing they do ask is, what is the cost? The nice thing that I feel that the cloud providers have kind of given us is the ability to not have to do CapEx spend as much as it used to be required. So for on-prem security controls, there used to traditionally be a big CapEx spend required in terms of either hardware or even licenses, very much upfront, sign for 12 to 24 months kind of model, and there you go, you've now spent your money for the next budget run. With the cloud providers, it's very much a variable kind of commercial model where you pay for what you use. You can spin things down. You can schedule them to only run certain hours of the day. So I do feel like from a cost perspective, it might not be as kind of set and forget. I'm going to pay a certain amount every month, and that's going to be my budget. But it is a lot more controllable when you've hosted your estate in the cloud. I hope that answers all of the questions there.
No, it does. Somewhat. And Nick, I'm going to defer to you because I've almost got laryngitis. So I end up coughing because of post-nasal. And post-nasal is like bad network security, right? So take it from there and carry that.
It's a terrible analogy for Friday, but because it's Friday, we'll let it go. And I'm going to ask the closing question for ML. ML, where do customers start?
I think I can answer that in two ways. One, have a proper idea of what you have and what it is that you need before you try and move it. So, a lot of the time people just want to move everything they have, and half of the things they're moving are no longer necessary. So have a proper look at your estate in terms of security controls. See what needs to move onto your cloud provider, and see how you want to manage your costs once you get there. So work with somebody who knows how this stuff is supposed to go. Make sure you've got the right design in place. The second thing is make sure that whatever security you have in place, when you're doing the digital journey onto the cloud, don't go backwards. Either stay the same in terms of your security maturity, or go forward. So add to it. Don't, just because you're moving into the cloud, either relax your security or start kind of not replacing things that you used to have. So if you have access control at the moment, make sure that you have it in your new hosting environment. At least keep it level and the same as what it was. Best case scenario, you get to save some money in terms of having more flexible costs and maybe add to your security controls in the cloud.
I love that. So today is Friday, the 26th of November. You are watching SCI Fridays with myself, Alistair, and ML. And if you are watching this as the long tail on YouTube, then please do hit like and subscribe so that we know that you love what we are doing. And with that, any last words from you, Alistair, before we close out?
No, do we have a closing jingle, or do I close? I just need to understand.
We have
Are you
both.
going to sing a jingle?
No, I'm
Because
not
if you're
With his
you're
throat
volunteering
the way that
to sing
it
a
is,
jingle, then
yeah, he's humming.
I'm humming. Well, normally I just thank everyone for sticking around, and we're excited to have you here. Thanks, ML, for your time. We really appreciate it. How do people get hold of you, by the way, on the interwebs and the Twitterati? Is there a specific handle they can ping you on?
I don't have a Twitter handle. I don't really do social media, but we do have a website, port443.co.za.
And you are wizard at port443.co.za.
Yes. That one will also work.
Is that a security decision that you've made to stay off grid when it comes to social media? Okay.
My life is interesting to me. It shouldn't be to other people.
100%. Well, thanks then. With special thanks for spending some time with us today, because we're going to broadcast this across the interwebs, right? So,
I realized
you're either
Nicholas explained this to me the first time around, and I'm kind of settling into the idea.
You're doing great.
either
everyone.
famous or infamous. So thanks everyone for sticking around for that 15 minutes. Boom, we need a countdown timer to see if we can smash the 15 minutes. If you do catch us on the tail end, like Nick says, it's not live and you're on YouTube, hit that smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we hope to see you soon somewhere around in the world. Ciao, ciao.
Bye, guys.